Welcome to the Goal Podcast, the podcast for serious soccer players and their supporters to help further their development and navigate their way throughout their soccer career.
And welcome to New England Soccer Journal's The Goal Podcast. I'm Patrick Donnelly, joined today by Matt Doherty. We're going to be previewing some MIAA soccer as the playoffs near. Matt, how's it going?
I'm good, Pat. How are you?
Not too bad. You know, fall weather's starting to kick in. It means playoffs are right around the corner.
I'm excited. The fall season always flies by, but I really can't believe the tournament is here. But it's the best time of the year, so I'm excited to break some stuff down with you today. Get ready for the postseason, and it's always the next 3 weeks always delivers every year, no matter what you think. So I'm excited. I hope you're excited too.
Yeah, I'm pumped. You know, last year was when I was on the covering boys soccer primarily, it was, you get the Cinderella run from Newton North.
I know.
You get, it's always fun. Anybody can beat anybody. And, sometimes kind of might fly in the face of the power rankings conversation we had earlier this year. But that's why they play the games. That's why you roll the balls out and go play. Like I said, we'll be running through playoff pictures. Obviously the brackets, we're recording this on Tuesday, October 28th. The brackets have not come out yet. Those will be this weekend as the tournament kicks off next week. But we'll run through the playoff, how the picture's shaping up on the boys side. I'll walk through with Matt, and then I'll hand it over to him, and we'll go through it on girls with me. Kind of a main focus towards D1, D2, D3. We'll maybe touch on a little D4, D5. But Matt, just starting in Division 1, on the boys side, you got some usual suspects at the top of the power rankings: St. John's Prep, Needham, BC High's in the mix as always. What's sort of got your eye here so far?
The depth and quality of the teams. I feel like I've harped on that a lot this fall on the website, but I think St. John's Prep is probably the best team in D1. I think that they have had the best season. They have their power rankings like an insane number at this point. Like, they're so far ahead of everyone else. So I feel like they enter the season or the postseason as the team to beat. But after them, like, who are they going to play in the finals? I think there's like 10 to 12 teams that could be there. That could, if St. John's Prep makes it, you know what I'm saying? There's like so many contenders. I think that's my biggest takeaway. I think the other divisions you look at, it's like, okay, I think there's a handful of teams, a group of teams, but you look at Division 1, there's just like so many teams. Everyone's kind of beat everyone during the regular season. I think it's going to be a really fun tournament, like looking down like through the top 20 seeds, and it's like, okay, we're going to see some upsets. We're going to see some teams that, maybe weren't in our top 10 this year that had really good seasons that could make a run. So I think that division is completely wide open of who makes the Final Four. Like, that's my biggest takeaway, and I'm excited for it. I think that's going to make a great state tournament.
Yeah, like you said, St. John's Prep, their rating is 3.8, and the rest of the decimal points. Everyone else is, Needham's 3.2, bunch of others clustered in from anywhere 3.1 to 2.8. So, like you said, really bunched together.
That's insane.
When you get into that kind of next group, like you said, which teams are catching your eyes there from maybe 2 through 15 or 2 through 20? You mentioned those top 20 seeds.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the top, like, Natick has made the biggest jump over the second half of the year. Like, they're playing really good soccer right now, and they beat Framingham, they beat Needham. They're up to 3 now. Like, that's an update from today. So, like, they're a team that's surging as the postseason looms. They're a team that can really score and put the ball in the net, and I think that's important in a tournament game. And also, like, they're now in position for home field, and we talked about that. Like, the home field is a big thing too for those top 4 seeds. So, like, they're a team. I mean, we know Newton South's great. Like, they're. I talked to a coach the other day who's played a lot of the good teams. Like, Newton South's the best team in the state, which is saying something. But they're a team. They beat Natick 6-1 too. So, like, those two teams, I think, outside of St. John's Prep and Needham, are the ones that can really make some noise. I think looking down, like, New Bedford also deserves a shout out. They beat Hingham 3-0, and have a team that quietly has flown under the radar this year. I think I'm gonna write about them this week, so stay tuned on the site. But looking down the rankings, I think this is where the mayhem comes in from, like, I mean, you can start at BC High, Bridgewater Ratum at 8, all the way to 20. I think these are the teams that I'm really interested in seeing how they're going to do this year. So like you look at Cambridge, who had a really good year in the DCL. Like Weymouth had one bad week. They lost a few games, had some guys out. They dropped to 10, but I saw them play last week. Like they're really good and have a lot of seniors and defend really well. So like that's a team at the 10 seed that could be in the Final Four. Beverly like does not stop scoring goals, and we talked about them this year, but I'm really interested to see how that group does in the state tournament. Lowell, like I know you covered Lowell last year. They were really good, right? Undefeated again this year. They've allowed like 5 goals all year. So it's like the MVC, we know isn't the strongest league in the world, and they didn't play anyone good necessarily outside of the league. But if they made a run to the quarters or the semis, would I be surprised? No. Like the data would show you that they're really good. And then like 17 Arlington, like I've heard people say like this is one of their best teams that they've had in a long time. So I look at like that whole group. That's just like what's going to happen there, and even looking down like a Brookline at 22, at Newton North at 26, like could those teams potentially, like they've played all those good BSC teams throughout the year, could they pull off a first round upset? I just think like we're in for some chaos, and the middle seeds are just going to be very hard to understand because there's not that much difference between like a 17 and a 10, I don't think.
Yeah, and those make for the best state tournaments. Just a couple more points on D1 before we kind of move down the list here. But you mentioned the scoring, especially from a team like Beverly. You look at their average margin; it's over 2 goals.
Yeah, it's huge. Sure.
Rating, and it's really interesting to compare that to St. John's Prep's margin is really big at 1.7, and then you look at their opponent rating and it's almost quadruple Beverly's, which makes, and when you put it into context, makes St. John's Prep's year that much more impressive. I feel like.
No, I know. It's insane what they've done. I like did I did that power ranking takeaway piece on the website. And like we did the overall rating, but regardless of the division. And it was just so funny looking at, I think at the time Prep was like 3.9. And then the next team was Framingham at like 3.2. And then Framingham's gap to like 26 was the same as Prep's gap to Framingham. It was like that's impressive. Like if we are the power rank, if we lo and behold the power rankings, like St. John's Prep will win the D1 title. Because that rating is just so, and I saw the play, like they're really, really good. And it wouldn't be a shot. We said they were going to win it all in the preseason. But yeah, I think it just like puts in the picture, like, wow, the dominant season that they've had. And they lost to Needham at Kicks for Cancer. They haven't lost since, and it's been pretty dominant what they've done since that defeat. So I do think everyone's gunning for St. John's Prep. But with that being said, like there's a lot of really good teams in this division this year. Like the depth is really strong, and even like we didn't even mention like Concord, Carlisle, St. John, Shrewsbury are the 15 and 16 seeds. So like one of those top seeds is gonna have to play them early on. Like that's not an easy match. Those programs, like they both, Concord, Carlisle won the state title 2 years ago. Shrewsbury was in the final last year. Like you don't want to play those teams in an early round state tournament game. That's just but it's going to be fun for us to watch that unfold for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned some lower teams outside of the top 20 as things stand right now, like a Brookline or Newton North at 26. I mean, it could be Newton North again, but
could we get a 31 seed again? 32 seeds?
Who do you think might be able to? Obviously, easier said than done as we're sitting here right now, but who might that kind of sleeper team be coming in?
Yeah, I mean, like Bishop Fian started off really strong. Like they were in our top 10. They're down to 27 now. So like, they've fallen off in the second half. But like, I don't know, they won some big games in the regulars and earlier in the year, and it's like, okay, they'll probably be playing like a 6 seed in the first round. Like that's a matchup against a team that was high in these power rankings. So I look at them, and then Winchester was a team I was high on entering the year. And like, I think they got off to a slow start. I was actually looking them up the other day, and like they beat Arlington last weekend, who is really good. So like they're a 30 seed, 9-3-4. I don't think they've lost in like a month. So that's another team. If we're picking this year's Newton North, like that could be a team. I don't think that's going to happen again. That's what the beauty of it. But those lower seeds, it's just like a matchup you don't want to play. Like you can get grinded down, like a 1-0 PK type game in the first round because of these seeds, like obviously in the teens that we talked about, but also in the 20s and 30s, who played in good conferences and had some good results and can put a good match together.
Yeah, we'll move on to D2 here. No surprise to see a usual suspect like Oliver Ames at the top of the D2 power rankings, but then you get into it. Northampton out west is undefeated. Longmeadow, of course, they're strong on the girls' side every year. They're doing their thing on the boys' side this year. Holliston and Duxbury can score, so can Masco. What do you make of this landscape so far here?
Yeah, I feel like this one's more top heavy. I think like those teams you just mentioned, I think will be the teams that will be there at the end. If I were to predict, I would like go some chalk here and go it's going to be an OA Northampton final, which I don't like to do, but I think that's kind of what my gut's telling me. But a couple of teams like Duxbury and Masco, I think are the two. They're 5 and 6 right now. Duxbury 5, Masco 6. Like those are the two teams that I'm really interested in seeing how they're gonna do in the state tournament. I think they're both very good offensively. They've kind of beaten down opponents all year. Like Duxbury only loss was to Hingham and Weymouth by a goal. We just talked about Weymouth in the D1. So like that's a team that hasn't not a soccer school either. Like this year's kind of come out of nowhere for that. They're girls soccer team. On the boys side, I wrote this up in the midseason report. Like the last couple of years, they've been around 500, lost in the first round every year, and then now all of a sudden, like they're a serious Final Four state title type team. And then Masco's been a great program. Masco is 2-2, and they've won 14 in a row. And I think the goal differential in those 14 wins is like 48-3. Like they're just like pounding teams right now. And a program that's good every year and has wins 16 games kind of frequently, but to go on that run right now, like they beat Beverly 4-0 earlier in the year too. So those two teams, I think, are outside of like the OA, the Northampton, the Longmeadow. Like those are the teams that I'm kind of keeping an eye on. Yeah, I think like those 5-6 teams, I feel like the Final Four will be from that group if I were to guess right now. But again, what do I know? That's just what I think.
Just before we wrap on D2, just like you said, that top 5 group's pretty hard to ignore, even that top 6. But when you get further down, one that catches my eye is a Mansfield at 500, but a pretty high opponent rating.
Yeah.
Maybe not the highest margin, but are there any kind of sleepers down here that you think might be able to challenge that upper echelon?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Hingham play yesterday, so like they made the state final last year, so they're 12 right now, and you can't count them out. Like they still have talent. They were missing a few key guys yesterday in that game against Norwell. So, no one wants to see them in the tournament. Like they could be a quarterfinal, Final Four team. I look at Bedford. Bedford's 18. Like that's another team. DCL is always a strong league, and Bedford went on a run where they didn't allow a goal for I think 8 straight games. So anytime you can do that, like you mentioned that opponent rating, theirs is pretty high. I think those two teams come to mind at first. Somerset Berkeley a little bit. West Springfield's 10. Like they've had some good results playing out west. I think they tied Northampton last week. So that group of teams, I would say. But I am sticking chalk to D2, so we'll see if that comes back to bite me. But
yeah,
that's kind of how I'm viewing that division for sure.
Those Western Mass teams are interesting. We can get into this a little more on the girls' side too, but just they kind of all play each other. They're all a lot. There's a pretty big chunk of teams that's playing at a high level, so it helps your opponent rating, and they're all kind of just beating up on each other and flying in under the radar against. Obviously it's easier for us to get more coverage for the Eastern and Central Mass teams, but those Western Mass teams is a pretty big contingent of them across the board here.
There are, especially when we get to the lower divisions too. Like there's some Western Mass teams. Like Longmeadow played the prep this year and lost 2-0, but like that's the only kind of EMAS crossover. It's hard to really gauge how those teams are doing. Like You know what I mean? Because they don't
Yeah.
play a ton of the Eastern Mass teams. But I've heard Northampton's legit. Like I think they're as good as anyone in D2. So we'll give them some love, and I think they're gonna make the poll this week for the first time this year. So
Yeah, you got to be doing something right to be undefeated this late in the season. But
yeah,
we'll move on to D3. And again, another kind of situation of usual suspects, whether it's boys or girls soccer. You got Medfield and Norwell at the top. Medfield 13-3-1, Norwell undefeated. So again, you got to be doing something right there. Then you
is
got
that what the girls is too? Medford, North is the top
Girls
two,
goes Medfield, Nipmuc, and then Norwell.
and then Norwell. Okay.
Yeah. So, but again, here, whether it's those top two or anyone else kind of in that upper echelon, what's jumping out to you among the kind of favorites in D3?
Yeah, D3 is great. Like I like a lot of these teams. I saw Norwell play yesterday, and they're really good. Like I was thoroughly impressed with them. They got a striker, Brett Amorosino, who's just absolutely nasty up top, and Ben Garland's another. He's like kind of his running mate up top. Like they're legit. Their defense is really good. They're just so athletic. Like watching them play. They played Hingham yesterday, 1-3-1. Just like a fast, athletic team. A lot of lacrosse players from and they have a really good lacrosse program. But they're just really good. Like I you never know what's gonna happen, but you know, not going out on a limb here. They're my Division 3 title favorite. But then I look at Medfield and Dover Sherborne as the two teams I think, you know, will really challenge them from the TVL. Medfield arguably has the best player in the state in Max Tillman, who's just scored every single game this year and absolutely nasty up top. And then DS returned a lot from, they've kind of flied under the radar, DS. I think they lost a few games early on, but they've come on strong. So those three teams, I feel like are kind of a cut above everyone else. And so like if the bracket held true, right, we'd get a DS Norwell semifinals. So I feel like that could be like those three teams have kind of established themselves. You look at the rating too, like they're kind of head and shoulders above everyone else. So I know kind of boring, but I'm sticking to the top again in that division. I do think there's some teams like down below that could make a little run, but I think those three, like they've also, you know, challenge themselves out of the league and have good results in that regard. Like Norwell played DS, beat him earlier in the year. Norwell's played Hingham, they played Brockton, like they beat Weymouth too. So they've like also, you know, really challenged themselves outside of the league and fared well, obviously with that 17-0-1 record.
Yeah. And it's just as I kind of go down the list here in D3, I always like, you know, especially whether any division, as you kind of get further into it, you kind of look for the outliers, whether it's the opponent rating or the margin of victory or the record even. And, you know, I see some where you have North Reading 14-2-2 and really high scoring average kind of beating up on teams there. Pope Francis is interesting, just it's 6-6-6.
Yeah.
But you
look
know
at that average margin to 0.
Right.
Not even a decimal point, 0.
Which is impressive in itself. But whether it's one of those teams or anyone else, I know you said it again, kind of chalk, but before we kind of, you know, touch on D4 and D5, who are some sleepers here you might want to watch?
Yeah, well, like North Reading, as you mentioned, I have heard that they're pretty good and can score, and that league's produced some state champions before, so I wouldn't be like counting them out just because their opponent rating's lower. I mean, Pembroke, can't not mention Pembroke, who's, you know, Adam Scott, frequent guest of the pod, just every year wins double-digit games, and that's a team that you don't want to play come state tournament. East Bridgewater at 7 too, scoring a lot of goals. So they are in the same league as Norwell in the South Shore, but that's another team kind of lower on. East Boston as well at the 8th seed. I think so. 7-8 in East Boston, East Bridgewater, North Reading, Pembroke. Those are a few teams down the board that I think I personally like. So, but I think it is Norwell's to lose. No pressure, Clippers. They're
Instagram already.
Yeah.
We'll touch on D4 and D5 really quick. In D4, you have
Right.
Sutton, Douglas, and Hamilton Wenham in your top three in the power rankings. Hamilton Wenham undefeated. In D5, 2 undefeated teams at the top with Boston International and St. John Paul II. Just kind of your quick thoughts on D4 and D5.
Yeah, Boston International for D5 just won the City League title over the weekend. Either made the semis or the final last year. Do you remember that? I should have looked that up, but they made a deep run last year, brought back a lot of guys. Like, I think it's their division to lose. They also have a really strong power rating as a D5 school. I think that the average margin kind of fluctuates out, but I think they beat Lincoln Sudbury a few weeks ago at the UCL. So, like, they've also challenged themselves outside of the league. Yeah, look at that average margin, 2.29. Just blowing out the City League schools. So I think D5's their division to lose, and they have a 3.3 rating. Like, that's higher than Needham.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, 3.22. Like, that's insane. So I think they're a team that they should win D5. D4, I like Westport at number 4. 15-0-2. They like they're good. They've won D5 titles, moved up to D4, and they lost like 7 seniors. Coach Chris Parker wasn't sure how the season was going to go, and they've also just kind of blown everyone out. Obviously that opponent rating's a little lower, but they're just a good program. They win a lot of games every year. So I think I like them. Sutton is the reigning champ, and Bromfield and Hamilton Wenham. Like, those 4 are also really good. So I am chalky. Like, that when I go through this the board, I'm looking at the later divisions and I'm chalky. D1, I'm not chalky, but the other ones, I think, like, there is a step up from those teams that I can't ignore. Like, I think that those top teams are the better ones. I guess if we were to pick some upsets, like Abington, Rockland, 5 and 7, come to mind right off the bat too. So
yeah, but I would also I think I read the D4 girls top 3 off the rip. So just for the correction here, D4 boys top 3 goes Sutton, Bromfield, and Hamilton Wenham, and then Westport at number 4, like you mentioned. But any closing thoughts on boys before we flip it over to girls?
Closing thoughts. I think it's gonna be a fun tournament. I say that every year, but it will be. I think D1, I'm just really excited for that, and sort of some storylines too, like Oliver Ames. So they're gonna win a 4th straight. Who's gonna dethrone them in D2? That's kind of been on my mind all year, and then I think in D3, like, that Norwell, Medfield, Dover, Sherborne little group is gonna be fun to watch. But I think I said this mid-season report, like, there's going to be some chaos in D1, and I think that's what I'm most looking forward to seeing who beats who and which teams really emerge and make a run. Because, outside of the top, St. John's Prep and Needham, and throw Newton South in there, like, I don't know what's going to happen. So I think I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely, and that's what makes it the best time of year.
Exactly.
We'll flip it to girls. I'll kind of give you the baton here to walk us through on the girls' side.
Well, I've obviously followed your girls' coverage. Great job all year. Been keeping up with that. I feel like you're in the same boat, right? Like, D1, there's so many good teams in that division. Like, how can you kind of decipher a favorite? Do you have the same thought that I do, that there's just like 10 to 15 teams that could make the Final Four?
Yeah, you could talk me through any of 1 through number 13 in Division 1 making a run.
Right? Yeah.
Not even making a run, because just with the seedings and stuff, they should all make a run in some form, shape, or form. Any of them making the Final Four or even the state final, you can make a case for. Needham, honestly, I felt bad in my rankings last week. I was really I was late to the party to give Needham their flowers in my power rankings, because they were in the top 10 coming into the year. Kind of a so-so start. They fall out. And they've really just, at least quietly for me, just did their thing, had a really strong schedule, and next thing you know, they're 14-2-1. They've beaten Natick, they've beaten Wellesley, and here they are atop the power rankings in D1. And it was just last week that I finally got them back into the top 10. But obviously, they're one to watch. Wellesley, every year is just, if not the best, one of the best, and I expect them to be firmly in the mix. Bishop Fian. We talked about them a little bit on the preseason or the midseason report, I should say. But just we knew they'd be in the mix. We didn't know they'd be this good. And I talked to Phil Silva coming into the year for the story we did on Fian, and I was wondering if he was kind of playing his cards close to the vest a little bit. But Quinn Duomo as a freshman has been fantastic. Savannah Ryan's been really good. Laney Colley, kind of all their big returners, Tia Lebrecht, they've all stepped up. And then you add in just an X factor like Quinn Duomo, and next thing you know, you're 14-0-1. You're kind of blowing teams out, and you're one of the favorites, if not the favorite, coming into the tournament.
Would you say like that team to be?
I would say so. It's obviously they're number 3 in the power ranking, so they're not the favorite according to the math. But just from what I saw, I've seen them once this year. And it was against Wellesley, and it's pretty much as good of a litmus test. And they really carried the play, and I was Duomo's just a really impressive for what her ability already is as a freshman, just with her size, her speed, kind of a classic game breaker up front there for them.
Yeah, that thing about them too, like I feel like they played all the best teams too. Like they really scheduled tough, which you kind of have to do in the Catholic Central. But and they beat everyone, right? Like they beat Wellesley, they beat Masco, they beat Medfield. Like I think that's what they didn't play Needham, right?
I don't believe so.
But that's kind of what impresses me is to like schedule the best and beat the best. Like, do you know who they tied? Like who was their tie?
They tied Cardinal Spellman a week ago or a week or two ago.
Oh, wow.
And Spellman is we'll kind of get to them in D3, but they've been really impressive just as far as the Catholic Central goes. But I mean, I look further down D1, and you think about Concord Carlisle with all the talent they have, whether it's Emily O'Donnell or Belmont last week beating, they tied Winchester, they beat Arlington, they beat Lexington, and those are the 4 teams we were talking about in the Middlesex League. And Belmont kind of asserted their dominance there. Braintree has really kind of not treaded water. They're 7-4-6, but really tough schedule. You look at their opponent rating, 3.2. It's one of the highest of any teams in the top 10, in the top 15. Brookline's in a similar boat where like the record isn't sparkling. They started 0-3-3, but since that they're 5-4-2, and so they're a team that maybe if it's not an apples to oranges comparison, but when you look at the NFL, like the Chiefs and the Bills don't start that well, and then they come out of their bye and ripping everybody's heads off. Brookline isn't necessarily in that ripping everybody's heads off category, but they're starting to play some of their best soccer at the right time. And we had in our top 10 coming into the year. And I'd say they're one to definitely watch as far as, at number 14 and upset potential when you get deeper into the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels like the BSC this year has become the best league, right? Or according to the power rankings, like you have 4 of the top 6 from the BSC with Needham, Wellesley, Natick, Braintree. And then you look at Brookline, Weymouth 3-7-7 for 15th seed, Newton North 16th seed. Like that league has obviously been valued as the best league.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say like you think a couple BSC teams will make a deep run?
Yeah, I mean, I called out, not called out, but I put them on the spot in my mid-season report. I said I'd say Natick would win out in the regular season. They did not. They almost lost against Franklin, then they lost the next game against Needham, and then I believe they lost to Wellesley if it wasn't a tie the other night. So I would say I mean, as far as the Bay State Conference teams go, you could talk me into Wellesley and Natick for sure being in the Final Four, and and in Needham too, of course. And naturally they're all within the top 4 seeds. But every time I haven't seen Needham since the start of the season. I'm going to be watching them tomorrow on the 29th. But as far as Wellesley and Natick goes, I've seen, I believe, both of them twice, and nothing about their game says they can't win a state title. And whether it's a Brookline making a run, or you look further down, Weymouth, again, it's not a dazzling record, but battle tested. A team that with that sort of experience and sort of knowing what it takes in those hard games when you come into crunch time in the playoffs, maybe not surprising if they get into the Elite 8 or what have you going down the stretch.
Is there anyone down the board, like if we're looking at 20 to 30, or even like, let's say outside of that 16 Newton North. Like if you look down the power rankings there, a team that has a higher seed that, you kind of have an eye on that could make a deep run.
Yeah, I would say, Cambridge, they can obviously 8-5-2. They started really well in the dual county league. A team that can, the margin isn't impressive on paper, but they can pop for some high offense in a game. I would put Beverly in a similar category. Blanking on her name, but they have a freshman this year who's been phenomenal for them at 12-4-2. Your schedule is your schedule. I think the Northeast Conference has maybe been a little better this year too. But that I'd say Beverly's one to watch. Arlington, we've kind of harped on the Middlesex League teams here.
Yeah.
Arlington at 9-3-5 with playing a pretty strong schedule. I would look at Arlington too, especially.
Okay. We could get Cambridge on both sides. Cambridge boys and girls state championship. Yeah. Let's run it. All right. So D2 is, D1 wide open. Well, there's a lot of good teams. I think that's my takeaway, right, from that division. Let's transition over to D2. Reigning champion Masco, 5 seed right now. I remember when I was doing some summer stuff, and I was like, how is Masco not going to repeat? Like, they're absolutely loaded. Are they still kind of the team to beat in D2, or are they kind of among a bunch of different teams now? And who's kind of has, if you're looking at D2, like, who should we keep an eye on?
Yeah, my gut with Masco tells me they're better than we've shown. The 14-3-1. It's not like they're super disappointing, but they're interesting. They have all the talent. Maggie Blosser, Violet Malinowski, Evie Mills in net. They have it's a team that has that championship pedigree, as we know, and has the ability with all the talent they have to just kind of turn it on and get on this run, which, maybe they'll do that come playoff time, but, Marblehead's given them some trouble. Central Catholic is a good team, as we've seen this year. So, their losses are to Marblehead, which has probably exceeded expectations in the Northeast Conference. They're the 14th seed in D2. Bishop Fian, which is obviously potentially the favorite in D1, and Central Catholic, which has carded a very strong season. They're top 10 seed in D1. So it's not like they've lost to pushovers or teams that they should beat up against. It's all been quote unquote quality losses, if you want to say that. Yeah. And you just look at their ceiling; it's still super high. So I'd expect them to kind of do their thing in the playoffs. As far as teams, I would keep an eye on. Hingham's 1-2, like they're at number 4, and they just split the season series with Duxbury last night, but they beat Duxbury earlier in the year. Duxbury's number 1. A team that can score with the best of them, even though the opponent rating isn't the highest. They've had some wins there where they're putting up 5 goals, 4 goals, and Hannah Lash has been really productive this year for them. She's one to watch when we'll get to hockey season too. But
she's good.
Yeah, and then obviously Longmeadow. We talked about sort of that Western Mass kind of flying under the radar. Longmeadow's played a really strong schedule in Western Mass. They have 3 seniors who can really score with when called upon: Emerson Cage, Cameron Greenman, and Ryan Manning. A team that we might not know much about coming in to the tournament, just being in Western Mass, but I'm sure they could easily catch someone by surprise for whoever's not doing their homework. As far as the rest of D2, I mentioned Marblehead. Liv Carlson has been a really strong offensive force for them. They've given Masco trouble with a tie and a win. They tied Linfield, and Linfield's one of those stronger teams in D3 that can also score with the best of them. So as far as the 14 seed, when you look further down, I'd keep an eye on Marblehead, and King Philip's in that similar boat as a Brookline in D1, if you look at it, because they didn't start all that well, but they've really righted the ship here in a pretty difficult conference. The Hockomock's been strong this year, 7-5-5 with a 2.7 opponent rating. I'd keep an eye on King Philip as a 9 seed, at least as of October 28th.
Okay, I like that. What about Mansfield? I know they got the Fernandez sisters, right? Like they've been pretty good all year. They made the state final last year.
Yep, Mansfield for sure is Mansfield for sure, especially, like you said, the Fernandez sisters. I feel like Ali Fernandez has been mentioned in, not every single peak performers.
She could be, right?
You could be, and you get into that. Oh man, I really don't want to write about the same player 3 weeks in a row. We're going to spread it out a little bit here, but she's again a game breaker like that. You look at Duxbury's in the similar boat where any of those top 3 seeds, it would not shock me at all.
Yeah. All right, let's go to D3 before we head to 4 and 5. I love this division from afar watching it because I think Medfield, Nipmuc, and Norwell are like as good as the D1 schools, right? Like that's going to be a fun tournament to see how that unfolds. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. I think D3 is the one I'm most interested to see how it plays out. You look at that top 7, and obviously the top 3 are on a different.
Give me more teams too, because you just mentioned Cardinal, Spellman, tied Fenian, so
yeah, you get the kind of 1A tier with Medfield, Nipmuc, and Norwell, and then you get that 1B tier with Hanover, Pope Francis, Linfield, and Spellman. This is super interesting. Medfield and Norwell, like we said, kind of back in earlier this month, the midseason report, those were the headline grabbers coming into the year. Medfield has Sydney Heavey, Emily George, Elizabeth Hoffman, Devin Weaver. They're 15-1 for a reason. They're you look at these ratings of the top 3, 4.8, 4.2, 3.7. That puts them in the upper echelon of D1 with those best teams in the state. Nipmuc kind of fell in between the cracks between the Medfield and Norwell for us coming into the year. But hey, they're the defending champs for a reason. They're 16-0-1, still undefeated. Anya Montano, I think it is. Sorry if I'm butchering.
She's going to UConn.
I apologize if I'm butchering any names here. Just kind of, I wrote my chicken scratch notes and I can't read them myself. So, that's good note taking on my part.
That you got that one right.
Yeah. But again, they're like at 16-0-1 at this time of year for a reason. And it's not like they've been, playing pushovers. 1.9 opponent rating that puts them, in that upper tier of D3 teams as far as opponent ratings go. And then you get to Norwell with the Tuttles, 12-2-2. And again, just these 3 teams at the top of the opponent or average margins all over 2. Even Medfield kind of 2.5. It's a clear separation of a top tier right there.
Right. But you feel like there's some teams in that second, third tier that you like as well, right? Spellman, you mentioned, Linfield. Like, if it's not one of those 3, like who else? Who could crash the party?
Spellman's one in particular I'm really interested about. Like we said, tied Fian. St. Mary's has been a pretty high scoring team in that Catholic Central League, and I think Spellman's beaten them twice. I want to say, if not, I had the schedule in front of me, so I should remember that. But either way, a high scoring offense, and what's super impressive about them is it's been kind of 2 freshmen at the forefront of a lot of their wins. Bryn Nickley and Emerson McCann. I think I've highlighted Bryn Nickley a few times in the peak performers. So it's interesting what happens with when you get into the state tournament, if the when the lights are bright, if you kind of just go in guns blazing, no fear. So I would keep an eye on Spellman. Pope Francis, again, record at 8-2-7, a lot of ties, a really high opponent rating at 2.7. That would be the highest of any team in the top 10 in D3. And again, several players that can score. You got Maeve Turnell, Mila Dillard, Rylan Wakovich. If I got that name correct, I'm kind of making a habit of this here. But whether it's them, and I look at Linfield as a high scoring team with Ava Damiani, and North Reading too, another high scoring team with Ali Lanciani.
She's a stud.
Yeah, just the Linfield and North Reading in particular, 2 of those Cape Ann League teams who just have no problem scoring and kind of can do it at will in any given game. So I would look at them, and again, in these tournaments, all it takes is 1 game. You can just pop for 4 or 5. If it were, even a clutch goal from your stud in the late moments, that's all you need.
Right.
So those are the other teams I would keep an eye on in D3.
Nice. Yeah, that's going to be a good bracket. My God. I also like the depth of players you got like that. You're just reading off all those college commits. Like Dillard's going to Kentucky, and like he's just like obviously Medford does the D1 players, Nitmuck does, like Lanciani at Northwest. Like he has so many good players in this bracket too. So this is going to be a good one. This is going to be. I'm interested to see how that shakes out. All right, before we wrap up, you want to hit on D4, D5 as well. I know D4 Sutton's going for like their 50th straight title. And then D5, we have Granby at the top. I think they might have won it last year. But if you look at those two divisions, like what jumps out at you, and is Sutton going to win it all again?
Yeah, it's tough to go against Sutton just with the track record. I would look at Hamilton Wenham at 12-0-4, undefeated coming into the year, and another offense that can you can bottle it in at any moment and pop for a bunch of goals in a short period of time. D5 Granby, I've highlighted them a few times in our peak performers. This week it was Marcella Tapia. They seem to be, as far as those Western Mass teams go, the opponent rating isn't the greatest at 0.05, but when you're clearly doing something right to be 11-3-4 and again able to score with the best of them. St. John Paul II in D5 I would keep an eye on as far as high scoring. Reagan Dillon's been on a strong heater late here in the season. I think it was 2 weeks in a row for her in the peak performers, just with hat tricks galore, multi-goal games galore. So when you get a player like that who's kind of fighting their form late in the season, and maybe he can carry you on a run. But yeah, D4 or D to wrap on D4, I would say, Mount Greylock further down, 14-2-1, with a pretty high margin at 1.9. Again, another one of those kind of high scoring teams. South Hadley, I would keep an eye on as well. But yeah, it's hard to ignore Sutton or Douglas or an undefeated team like Hamilton Wenham.
Yeah. I know Nitmuck, I think, beat Sutton twice in the regular season. So that's right. Like they had the 4 losses, but 2 of them are against a really strong team. So
and one of those losses was PKs, I believe.
They lost in the Central Mass tournament or that one. Yeah. Okay.
Or not PK. It was excuse me. It was a late PK that decided it. It didn't go.
Oh, I got you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're going for a 5th straight. Like we talked about OA on the boys' side. This would be they're going for a 4th straight, but 5th straight's pretty crazy. It's a dynasty. Yeah. That's what we call that, right?
It is.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for running through this, Pat. Great stuff. Great insight. Priming each division for us. You want to do some extra time before we head out?
Yeah, I think it's time to turn it over to producer Dave for extra time.
It's the end of regulation, so let's move to extra time.
Yes, producer Dave here with another edition of Extra Time, where I throw some questions the way of both our panelists here. Special edition of Extra Time today. It's quiz time. That's right. So put on your thinking caps, kids. I have 3 questions for each of you on sort of history of the sport of soccer. Rules might be mixed in there. I don't know, have some fun. And whoever wins will be showered with praise. Whoever loses can go home and hang their head in disgrace. Matt, you're already home, so I don't want, spoiler alert, it might be him. I don't know. Let's start with you, Pat. Question number 1. In the Manchester United versus Villarreal 2021 Europa League final, Geronimo Rulli was the player who recorded the final penalty kick. It went to a shootout, and the shootout was the final of the 10 penalty kicks. Rulli was the winner, and so Villarreal prevailed. Why was Rulli an unlikely candidate to convert the winning kick?
I am out of my depth on this one. I'll go as simple as he was an unheralded sub off the bench, but
no. Yeah. Matt,
he was the goalie.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So since it went to 10
I feel like I remember that.
It went
I didn't actually know that. That was just my guess. Because that would make it kind of interesting. And I did see that in a tournament game maybe 2 years ago. The goalie, Belmont. It was Belmont boys. Goalie won the game, scored the winning penalty kick, the go-ahead penalty kick went back in the net and then saved it to win.
Oh,
in the
that's
state
awesome.
game. So that came to mind, and that would make sense. Was he also was he the starting goalie, David?
I believe so.
Like
I know
he was
that
saving the PKs and then went up to shoot.
I can tell you, he did ultimately save the goal that won the game. So he had the winning kick and the winning save in the same game. Pretty good day for that. You didn't buy any drinks that night, I'll tell you. All right. Question number 1 for you, Matt. Controversy loomed in the 1966 World Cup final after Jeff Hurst's second goal hit the crossbar, bounced down, and was ruled a goal. West Germany came up on the losing end of this game. Which country was Jeff Hurst playing for?
Jeff Hurst? I was going to ask which country he played for in this. I understand
that's the question.
1960 played West Germany. 1966 what?
1966 World Cup final. West Germany was
Cup
losing
final.
team.
I have 2 guesses. Okay. I'm going to go Netherlands.
No. What was your other guess?
England.
That would have been correct. So far, the score, like a good soccer game, is 0-0. Question number 2 for you, Pat. In Argentina's 2-1 win over England in the 1986 World Cup final, Diego Maradona scored a goal famously by using his hand. What phrase did he later use to describe how it happened?
The hand of God.
That's right.
Good stuff.
Yes. All right. Pat's on the board.
I got one.
What do you mean you got one?
Partial credit.
First one. No, I got the goalie one.
No, there's no stealing in this game. We were asking you if you knew that one just for kicks. Sorry. Rules are rules. That was Pat's question. All right.
I got you. I thought we were both going.
All right. Just don't try to manipulate this, Doherty. Next question for you, however.
Okay.
And let's see. We take you to the 2010 World Cup. Uruguayan player Luis Suarez committed a controversial foul against Ghana. He was sent off, but Ghana missed the penalty kick, and Uruguay ultimately won in the shootout. What penalty did Suarez commit?
Can you use the adjective you used to describe it again?
Well, did
you say like an egregious penalty? Like how did you describe it?
Yeah, well, a controversial foul.
Controversial. Okay.
And he got a red card and was sent off. Ghana missed the penalty. Go ahead.
Headbutt.
No.
Slide tackle.
No. It was a handball. He desperately knocked the ball away from the goal that would have rolled in. All right.
I wasn't sure if this was his biting incident because I do remember that.
Okay. Well,
I think that was a later World Cup though.
Apparently. Okay. For you, Pat, in 1982, West Germany and Austria played a FIFA World Cup match. West Germany beat Austria 1-0, but both teams advanced to the next round. Why did this match come to be known as the disgrace of Dijon? There was an early goal, 1-0, and the game finished at 1-0. It's kind of a hint. Both teams advanced to the next round, and it became known as the disgrace of Dijon. Dijon. I'll tell you that right.
Okay, so that hint makes me think maybe the game never finished. There was some like off-field incident that happened.
You're warm, but you're wrong.
Okay.
Matt, it was like an illegal goal.
No.
Sorry.
What year was this? 82. So I was
82.
at Harvard.
Both teams appeared to stop attacking after an early goal, and they intentionally missed shots, agreeing that the 1-0 final score would lead to both.
So it was like a group play game, so they both would advance.
Yeah, they essentially fixed it so they both would advance.
I got you.
Later, the rules were changed to make sure that games were played simultaneously rather than knowing the result of a game heading into the next one, if that makes sense.
In my head, I was thinking it was like a knockout stage game, so I was like very confused as how they were both advanced. I thought it was, I
wasn't trying to confuse you, Matt. I swear.
No, I know.
Kind of a timely question with the NBA scandals going on right now. Point shade.
Yeah.
So that's why they have like those games at the same time now. That makes sense. What year was that? 82?
It was 82. Okay, so you still have a chance to tie this up, Matt Doherty, with your final question.
Okay.
And we take you to the 2006 World Cup final, and French player. Yes, French players. How do you pronounce his name? Zinedine Zidane.
Yeah.
Did I have that right? Yeah, you're correct in that. That's not the question, though. He infamously headbutted very late in the game to earn a red card in a match ultimately won by Italy. Yeah. What did Zidane announce in the days following the World Cup? What notable announcement did he make?
He retired.
That's correct. Wow. So in the final minute, Matt has tied this up 1-1. Again, just like a good soccer game. So we'll go to a shootout, and I want you both to guess what year the first FIFA World Cup was held in. What year was the first World Cup? So, Pat, write it down. So we're both in the cone of silence here. Matt, you don't have to write yours down, but I'm going to make Pat write his down so that neither of you know the other one's guess. And okay,
you know what's difficult, Pat, is like the 4 years. Like you have to, like, was that year part of the reputation? Like that's the first.
Yeah, you know it's probably an even number, right?
Right, but is it like, is it a 6 or a 2 or a 4 and 8?
Matt, you can go first. What year was the first World Cup? Closest to the year wins the match here.
1936.
Okay. Pat, what do you got?
I have 1928.
1928.
We're close.
Okay.
Price is Right rules.
I don't have a drum roll here, do I? I have a.
What if it's 1932 or we split?
The first
Price is Right rules.
It was not 1932. The first World Cup was held in 1930. And Pat, well, is our champion today. Matt, you're only off by 6 years, but Pat was only off by 2.
Six too many.
So
I was thinking about 32. I was going to say 32 or 36.
Congratulations to you both. And I will headbutt you both the next time I see you in honor of this amazing match. Back to you, Pat, to wrap things up.
All right. Well, this has been the Goal Podcast from New England Soccer Journal. Thanks so much to Matt Doherty for jumping on as we previewed some MIAA playoff soccer. Thank you to producer David Yas. And this has been a New England Soccer Journal production. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
You've been listening to New England Soccer Journal's The Goal Podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to our podcast. Or visit anysoccerjournal.com/podcast. Siemens Media. Inspiring, informative, insightful.